In 3 weeks is Chuseok holiday in Korea, which is known as the Moon Festival in China. Together with the Lunar New Year's Day, it's the biggest holiday in Korea. It's the time of the year to celebrate the first harvest of the year, for big family gatherings and plenty of food. It's also the day of reinforcing family root and identity by offering memorial ritual to dead ancestors and visiting their tombs. And that gave me an idea for the very loosely connected episodes for the next 3 weeks into Chuseok holiday. Koreans' complex relationship to their dead family members. It's the theme I already touched in the episodes about the memorial ritual called 제사, and late family members turning into either the guardian angel or the angel of death. If you missed them, the links are in the description. But I'd like to revisit it from slightly different angles. Emphasis on family bond and love is not uniquely Korean at all, but the mixture of Confucius and shamanic traditions created the notion that you are bound to the bilateral family obligation both in life and in death. One has to still care for the prosperity and lineage of the family clan even after death, and the descendants in return have to still show their respect and care to the dead ones by running a proper funeral, choosing the right burial plot, and offering regular memorial ritual down to 3 generations. That is one of the reasons that every stage in regard to a death has developed so ritualistic and elaborate with very specific do's and don'ts in Korea. So, as a general introduction to the theme, today we are taking a look at 4 allegedly true stories about dead family members still influencing their descendants. Some play a guardian angel, and others unwittingly cause disturbances. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by your host, Anthony. It's my friend's story. Let's call her Hisu. Hisu experienced lots of risky incidents from her childhood, but every time she was spared with the help from her guardian angel. For example, on one holiday, her family stayed at an old holiday cottage. Hisu wanted to go out to its wooden balcony to take the view, but before she stepped on it, a female voice urgently called out her name. Only then she figured out the floor of the terrace was so rotten that it would have collapsed had she stepped on it. And that way, she had multiple close situations throughout her life, but saved by the voice. But then, when she was a teenager, she had a car accident. It was a big crash, but she miraculously survived with a minor injury. And mysteriously, since the accident, she has never heard from her guardian angel again, or experienced other risky situations. One day she watched an old videotape that filmed her talent show at the kindergarten. Hisu then realized the voice of the person behind the camcorder was the very voice of her guardian angel. It was apparently filmed by an aunt, Hisu's mom's sister, who died young when Hisu was little. Hisu now believes her guardian angel that saved her life so many times was her aunt. But that wasn't the whole story yet. Later, Hisu's mom told her that she visited a shaman before Hisu was born. The shaman said a malevolent ghost was hanging around Hisu's mom, and it might try to claim the baby when it was born. Hisu's mom wasn't particularly superstitious, so just ignored it. But she soon noticed there were constant weird accidents happening around her baby girl, like an electronic device suddenly catching on fire around the baby. After one nearly fatal accident at the swimming pool, her mom couldn't ignore it anymore and seek the shaman again. But the shaman said it'd all get better and eventually all right soon. Hisu and her mom believes that the aunt had been the guardian angel and eventually took the ghost away with her. My grandfather, my father's father, passed away before I turned 3. I have no memory of him, but my mom would recount how much he adored her, his first daughter-in-law, and baby me, his first grandchild. Apparently he was a real old-fashioned gentleman, never raised his voice and always calm. I hear his death was solely unexpected from a sudden heart attack. So shortly after his death, I turned 3, and so far ever so healthy, active me suddenly fell ill. Fever got so high that I went almost breathless. The X-ray photo revealed my bronchi almost clogged up with the excess mucus, and doctors literally buried me under a pile of ice packs to lower the temperature until my lips turned blue. Fortunately, I recovered enough in a few days and was expecting to be discharged the following day. But the fever returned unexpectedly. This time, a case of hospital-acquired infection. It was considered life-threatening, and I was put on the strongest set of antibiotics. For the series of unexpected misfortunes, my grandma, Mom's mother, dragged Mom to a shaman. The shaman took a one look at Mom and said, Well, it's just the old man is feeling a bit lonely. Wait a second, I'll call him. The shaman shook her bells, chanting something. Then suddenly, Grandma called Mom's name and started talking with the tears pouring down. I'm sorry. I felt so lonely on my way. I barely had a couple of years with my first grandson. You know how I adored him. I was so reluctant to go away without seeing him one more time, so I fondled him a bit, not knowing it's going to come to this. I'm sorry. I'm going now, and all shall be fine. Be well and raise him well. Apparently, Grandpa's soul spoke through Grandma. Grandma herself didn't remember anything when she came around again, and asked why she was crying. The shaman then explained, They say ghosts' hands are thorny hands. The longer they hang around and try to intervene, the worse it is for the living, regardless of the ghost's good intention. Your father-in-law adores your son so much and seems to have stayed on a bit too long behind. He's gone now, and all will be fine. And indeed, I recovered as if all the nightmare of the past few days was but a dream. Back in the days, Yakult, the probiotic drink, was delivered to the door by an army of women whom people often called Yakult ladies. My mom made friends with one such lady, and she would sometimes come to visit us. She was fairly broad for a woman with a strong presence. I especially remember her eyes clearly, so sharp and penetrating. One day she stopped by again. Mom welcomed her in and offered iced coffee and snacks. I sat next to them, sucking on an ice cube and stealing some snacks. Then Mom went to take the washing out of the laundry machine, leaving me alone with the Yakult lady. She looked at me a while and then said, You have an achy shoulder now, don't you? I wondered, how could she know it without even touching my shoulder? Yes, how did you know? She sipped her coffee and said, giving her usual penetrating glance, "Don't touch it. Why don't you come and visit me tomorrow with your mom? I'll prepare lots of snacks for you," she said. A promise for snacks was exciting enough for young me to forget everything else. Soon Mom joined in, and the Yakult lady handed me 2001 and told me to go to the corner shop and grab whatever I'd like, that she had something important to talk about with my mom. It was not a small amount for a kid at the time, so I excitedly ran to the shop. When I came back with some bags of snacks, they were still talking. Like a good child, I retreated to my room and enjoyed the snack. And still, I overheard a few words from their conversation. "Looks like he committed suicide." "Really? Suicide? Hush. Anyway, bring him tomorrow." So Mom took me to Yakult lady's place the following day. I was surprised to see all the walls covered with colorful and scary paintings and strong smell of incense. I was uncomfortable and didn't want to go in, but the Yakult lady came out and persuaded me to come in. That she looked unusually mellow that day did play a part too. She took us to the room with a statue of Buddha and piles of sacks of rice. I wondered if she loved rice so much. Yakult lady brought out coffee for Mom and chocolate milk for me, and indeed a whole selection of snacks and candies. She assured they were all for me and that I could take any leftover home too. I stuffed my pockets with a few bags of them and started enjoying the feast. A while later, Yakult lady said to me, "Shall we play the hospital game? I'm the doctor and you are the patient. Lie down and I'll examine you." She told me to keep my eyes closed, but I couldn't resist peep through the narrowed eyes. She was making odd motions with her hands about my head and upper body. I found it funny, but tried to keep silent. About a half an hour later of that, she said, "It's all done. Time to take some medicine," handing me over another glass of chocolate milk. While she talked with Mom, I just wandered around looking this and that, with my mouth ever busy chewing snacks. What impressed me the most were, again, sacks of rice. Under the pedestal of Buddha statue in the bathroom. Then I again overheard their chat. "It was indeed a suicide, but he had no malicious intention, just wanted to hang around a bit. No worries." It finally dawned on me what this place and what she was, but I pretended to understand nothing. In the following year, my parents divorced, and as I lived with my dad, I had no more occasion to meet the Yakult lady again. I almost forgot all about the experience. Recently, we had a family gathering with my grandparents, dad, and uncle. It suddenly brought me back my childhood memories, including the Yakult lady, and I nonchalantly brought it up. "Dad, did you know? When I was little, Mom took me to her friend once. She talked about somebody had committed suicide, but he was hanging around to take care of me rather than to harm me." Contrary to my casual tone, the atmosphere got quite serious. "Baby, who told you that?" asked my grandma. Mom had a friend who must have been a shaman. She said that," I said. Grandma then came up with a family history that I didn't even know existed. My grandpa had a half-brother about 5 years younger, and not long after my grandparents' wedding, he was found dead in the toilet, having drunken a bottle of a strong ointment against athlete's foot. Grandma described him as having been sick in mind, always looking grim and frowned up. I presume he might have suffered severe depression. The only time he looked happy, Grandma said, was when he played with the babies and kids in the neighbors. And probably for the love of kids, he might have been around me when I was young. This is a story my cram school class teacher told me. Let's call him, for the sake of the story, Kil-dong. He failed to pursue the career as a lawyer, but by then became a popular and successful private teacher. He was then in his 40s, so I guess this story must have taken place in about late 70s. Sons were apparently very rare in Kil-dong's family. For 5 generations, there had been only a single son for each generation to carry down the family line until his grandfather produced 2 sons. Kil-dong was the son of the younger of the 2, but since the older son, Kil-dong's uncle, didn't have any son, he was now deemed to be the one to carry down this flickering family line. In this very traditionally patriarchal family, Kil-dong was very much loved and doted by both his grandpa and his uncle. When he turned 16, he was encouraged to go to a high school in a bigger town for a better educational opportunity. Since his father didn't want to move away from his aging father, Kil-dong left for the big town by himself. As the only hope of the family, the expectation was high for him to work hard and achieve much. At the same time, being practically the first and only son of the whole family clan, he had to join every family event such as memorial rituals. One day in his last year of high school, he had to attend the memorial ritual again. The ritual took place at midnight and it was nearly 2 in the morning when it was over. All Kil-dong could think about was going back to his room as soon as possible and catch a few hours of sleep before the school in the morning. But before he could leave, Grandpa held his hands and somewhat gravely told him, "You know very well that you are the only hope of the family, Kil-dong. Don't forget that." A few days later, Kil-dong was pouring his all for the SAT coming up in less than 2 weeks. It wasn't called a SAT then, but let's just call it for the sake of the convenience. He was already a brilliant student, but for all the pressure and expectations from the family, he could not dare even to make a mistake. But the news arrived that his grandpa passed away. Despite the big day coming up, for his responsibility as the only son and for the love of his grandpa who had adored him so much all his life, he had to join the funeral. The funeral was the usual 3-day affair, but on the second day, other elders of the family told Kil-dong that he should go back to study. Even his grandpa should understand given the situation, they said. But a few days later, he got a call from his family that he must come for something regarding his grandpa's funeral. Kil-dong was a bit baffled because the SAT was now just 5 days away. Nevertheless, he came to the family home. There was a big hustle and bustle going on, seemingly preparing for some big event. Some strange people in hanbok, traditional dress, were running up and down, and in the middle of it all was a shaman. Dressed and made up like a woman, but clearly a male shaman. As soon as Kil-dong arrived, even before he could have a glass of water, the shamanic ritual started, as the shaman insisted it had to start as soon as possible. Only after the first day's ritual wrapped up could he ask his uncle what was this all about. On the last night of the funeral after Kil-dong left, everybody dozed off of exhaustion, and every one of them had the same dream of Kildong's grandpa crying so mournfully as if he had lost or missed something. The following day was to be the burial, but one of the family members who was particularly superstitious brought in the shaman. And the shaman, after having a one look around, said, "You can't bury him yet. Go and fetch the youngest boy in the family." Even though nobody informed him about Kildong. The shamanic ritual continued on the following day. Suddenly the shaman stopped his dancing and stared at Kildong's father with a sympathetic expression. Right then, father came in the middle and started crying so mournfully. When he opened his mouth, the voice resembled exactly that of Kildong's grandpa. He came over to Kildong, held his hand, and said, "Grandpa is very sorry, Kildong. I just couldn't live peacefully without seeing your face one last time, my dear boy. You're the pillar of the family. Remember that, and always be good to your parents and sisters. I'll do my best from the other world to take care of you. Don't forget that, okay?" His sad last words continued on for a good 20 minutes, and everybody present there, including Kildong himself, could not stop crying, while the shaman looked on sympathetically. By the time Kildong came back to his place, SAT was 3 days away, and he had barely 2 days left to make last preparation. Given the chaotic last few weeks he had to go through, he thought that year's SAT might be already a lost cause, because he couldn't accept the result anyway less than what he expected. When the test was over, everybody commented that year's SAT was particularly tough. Kildong was baffled because he himself found it plainer than he had expected. Every question seemed picked up straight from the pages he focused on for the prior 2 days. Indeed, the result excelled his expectation, and he could enter the top university of his dream. He and his family still think that was thanks to his grandfather, who, true to his last promise, seemed to have guided Kildong through it. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. I grew up in a pretty conservative and patriarchal family milieu, and being the only son, had to join every occasion of family gatherings and memorial rituals. To be perfectly honest, for a young boy, all those were more a hassle than anything else. Indeed, such elaborate rituals are definitely a part of dying tradition in modern Korea, but you don't understand the present unless you understand the past. So by now, I'm happy that I had a chance to experience the traditional funerals and rituals firsthand. Next week, I'm going to talk about the all-important task of finding the right burial ground for the dead and the role of feng shui in that task. So stay tuned. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a like and comment, and consider clicking the notification bell and subscribing to my channel for the future uploads. Your little act of kindness helps small-time content creators like me greatly. Thank you. Until the next, stay safe and take care.